Hey, thank you for tuning in. I really hope you've been following up and keeping up with us as we've done the last few episodes, 3 to be exact. I've introduced you to Mr. Andrew Mura, a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya who specializes in conveyancing, commercial transactions, as well as arbitration. And as I've said in the previous episode, I have actually engaged Mr. Mura on several property transactions. In fact, as we speak, he's representing us on a number of real estate transactions. So it's not coming out of nowhere. And I'm excited that you get to hear directly from the horse's mouth what the law has to say about everything we've been barking about. So keep watching. You're watching Online in Kenya. I am Solomon Wangwe. So Andrew, I've done my due diligence on you. I've made sure that you are licensed currently the year 2018 to practice law in your field of expertise.
Correct.
Right? By checking out LSK's website, asking you for your license number. I have sorted out the terms of engagement or letter of engagement where we predefine what I'm getting for the fee that you're charging me.
Correct.
Right? So there's no ambiguity about what I expect at the end. This is where it gets hairy sometimes, because one of the things a letter of engagement stipulates is the legal fees, yes?
Yes.
What does the law say about legal fees? Because, you know, I'll be honest, I've mentioned before, I work with many different lawyers for different things, but I've had transactions where one lawyer quoted me, I think it was about 50,000 shillings or thereabouts. And a different lawyer from a different law firm was quoting me 120,000 shillings for the exact same thing. Why the discrepancy? And is there a guideline for someone who's engaging, especially for the first time? Because this is one of the most common horror stories I get from people. My lawyer fleeced me, he charged me too much for this, and then he didn't even do the job. What does the law say?
Okay. So the law is very clear. First port of call is the LSK website. The LSK website has a few acts that are relevant, and by acts I mean the laws that govern this country, that are relevant to your particular need. So in this case, we're talking about the Law Society of Kenya Act, but you don't even need to go into the act, because within the website, they've given what is known as the Advocates Remuneration Order.
Yeah.
The ARO, as it's commonly referred to. The latest version, I believe, is from 2014 or 2015. It essentially sets out the guideline for how much a lawyer should be paid for any given transaction. Okay. By this, I mean from purchasing land to registering a trademark to, you know, everything under the earth, right? Okay. Now, the interesting thing is, and this is where your 50,000 lawyer would differ from your 120,000 lawyer, right. The Advocates Remuneration Order gives a bottom amount. Okay. Lawyers are not supposed to, a bare minimum. Yeah. Lawyers are not supposed to charge an amount less than what has been stipulated. Okay. In fact, the term for it is undercutting, and it is actually illegal to undercut. Okay. And you'll find that, speaking about the lawyers who are not qualified, right. They will undercut. Right. Because, hey,
to get the business.
To get the business.
Yeah.
So, say a transaction, most cases, the lawyer's fees, when you're talking about a purchase or a sale, come to about 2%. So if you're talking about, then it also has a graduated amount. So for instance, if 2% of a property is, say a property is 100,000, and 2% is what?
2K.
2,000 shillings. Now, the law has already given you a minimum that no conveyancing transaction can be less than 35,000, for example. Right. Then from there, work with 2%.
Right.
Now, at the level...
And that's for, so, because I remember memorizing this. It's important
Yes.
when I'm negotiating with lawyers.
Yes.
Right? For any transaction from 1 shilling to 5 million shillings, you're not supposed to get paid, or rather you should charge me either 2% of that value or 35,000 shillings if the 2% is lower than 35,000 shillings.
Correct.
Right, but if the 2% is say 200,000,
Yes.
then I pay the
You
200,000.
pay the 200,000. Now the interesting thing, and this is where I draw the difference between your 50,000 lawyer and your 120,000 lawyer, is simply overheads.
Overheads.
So
like
by this I mean, if you go to a very big law firm, they have 1,000 associates to pay. So their markup on your transaction is definitely higher.
Right.
So whereas if you go to a smaller firm, their markup is not very high. So they are happy to charge you at the base amount of, whatever the 2% comes to.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So that to me sounds like that item I always see in the fee notes called, don't tell me, I'll remember it. So there's professional fee, there's VAT. Yes. So VAT is supposed to be charged on the professional fee.
Correct.
As stipulated by the Law Society of Kenya,
16%.
which is either 2% of the value between 1 shilling and 5 million, or 35,000 shillings, whichever is greater, right?
Yes.
So 16% of that.
Yes.
And then after that, this is where I usually fight with lawyers, that thing called disbursements.
Yes.
Right, so that's what you're referring to, the overheads.
No. Sorry. So legal fees is simply what you've defined, the 2%.
Right, the professional fee.
Professional fee, if you're talking about, in a manner of speaking, the lawyer's worth is 2% of that transaction, right? Now, any transaction includes disbursements. By disbursements, we mean stamp duty, we mean registration fees, we mean search fees. All these things are not supposed to be part of the lawyer's fees. And that's why they are entered as a separate amount, the same way you enter VAT as a separate amount.
And that's because those are fees that go to various government agencies.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Now, those disbursements, depending on the kind of transaction, could be, sizable.
Right.
And this is especially where you factor in the stamp duty, which is in urban areas is 4% of the value. Well, in agricultural land like Nanyuki and such places is 2%. So when it's 4%, you look at the fee note and you say, hey, why is why are the disbursements so much higher than the legal fees? That's exactly the reason.
Okay. But I'll be honest. I've asked lawyers sometimes, please define what you mean by disbursements.
Yes.
And I've had lawyers put in things there like photocopying, clerk fees, and some are so brazen to put in their facilitation fees. Explain that.
Okay. So
don't be politically correct. just
I'll try to tell it as it is.
Right.
So what happens is, years gone by, you would give your client legal fees, VAT, and a blanket amount on disbursements.
Right.
But then walk in Goshen Acquisitions Limited, who say, I want to know what my disbursements are going to. Right. And that has been, with everything that's been happening in the country, that's where the itemization of disbursements came from. So you are able to say, okay, yes, I've said disbursements are 50,000. This is where it's going to. 35,000 is going to stamp duty and all this. Now, the interesting thing, in fact, I should underscore, under the disbursement items, you should ideally get a receipt on each and every item. Right. So under stamp duty, 35,000, for example, you should get a stamp duty payment receipt from Kenya Revenue Authority. Right. From the relevant authority that received the payment. Exactly. Yeah. So that is why this amount used to be put aside. Yeah. Now, when it came to facilitation, unfortunately, lawyers wanted to put themselves away from that process, though they are the ones facilitating it, right? Yeah. So they were basically saying, look, I'm helping you quicken your transaction, but it's not coming from my pocket. It's coming from yours. Right. And that's why disbursements then started including the facilitation fees, which ideally, okay, let me not say ideally. The truth is, it's an illegal amount. It should not be there.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So just to be blunt about it, because I did interrogate one advocate once. They had an item there. I think it was 15,000 shillings. Called facilitation, and I asked him, "What are you facilitating?" The guy said, "Listen, if we do this the normal way, you'll be waiting 2 months for your title deed to get registered in your name. So I usually pay the registrar and the clerks the 15K, patia chai or something small, tea, to hasten the process so that we're not waiting forever."
Yeah.
Right. So I decline. Actually, have not worked with that advocate since, because they had no issues with that particular kind of engagement. I did, because bluntly speaking, that is corruption.
Correct.
It's wrong. Yes. You should not have to induce anyone financially, especially in the halls of government offices, to do what they are already getting paid to do as a service provision to myself as a citizen of Kenya, right?
Yeah. See, two things have worked against our society. Allow me to go a bit philosophical. One, the lawyer has been given a deposit.
Right.
He wants to collect on his full legal fees.
Yeah.
So it's in his interest to move the process faster.
Right.
That's the first one. And then the second one, which is of course, a little tied to this, is a client pays and they want the title right now.
Right.
You see? So it's very important for each and every lawyer, like we have tried at every point, to update our clients on the process. You see, what happens is when a client does not know what is happening, then they get impatient.
Yes.
But if you're able to tell at the point, in fact, I can even backtrack a little and say at the point of the letter of engagement,
yes,
if a timeline could be issued where you say, okay, we're going to go to the Land Control Board
yes,
in Nanyuki on the 23rd of October, for example,
right,
then you know nothing will happen, at least as far as your file is concerned,
between now and
then, because we must get the consent of the Land Control Board.
Yes.
So that patience really has a direct effect on this whole corruption conversation.
Right.
But let's not get to that. It's the lawyer.
I'm not buying it, man. Corruption is corruption. Don't do it, no matter the cost. I mean, I've said it before. I waited a whole year once to get a title deed to a property.
Yes.
We had paid the seller fair and square. They signed over the transfer documents. We lodged everything with the registry. I'm trying very hard not to mention the name of the registry, but I'll hold it back for now. But I mean, we waited a whole year simply because the registrar was demanding a 5,000 shilling chai or tea or inducement, financial inducement, a bribe, to sign that title deed as duly registered in our favor. That's a long time to wait for a document to get produced, especially when you've already spent the money. Yes. Right? At the same time, I had a buyer waiting in the wings to pay us for that property, and it was potentially a 30 million shilling transaction at the time. So, it's very easy to justify 5,000 bobs, a few million shillings. 5,000 bob is nothing, but just on principle, we couldn't do it. We needed to sleep well at night. Yeah. Besides that, it's illegal, guys. Just don't do it. Demand the right thing. In actual fact, in that instance, we ended up writing a letter of complaint to the cabinet secretary at the time, Mrs. Charity Ngilu. We copied everyone down the chain of command, from the chief registrar, the local registrar in that registry, all the way down to the district officer. Right. At the time. This was before county commissioners were now in power, right? And I kid you not, within 2 days our title deed was released, and we never had to bribe the guy. So we paid a price. We waited a whole year, but we've never had to wait that long since, because the registry knows these guys just won't pay a bribe. They're gonna write. In fact, the last time I was there, or the next time I was there, the guy looked at me and said, "Ule jamaa anaandikanga barua mbaya." That's a guy who writes bad letters and gets us in trouble. Give him his stuff and get him out of here, right? I'm not trying to make friends. I have a goal in mind. I have things to accomplish.
Oh, that's true.
So I find that if you just stick to the straight and narrow, do the right thing, you might have to pay the price in some time, but at least you will sleep better at night and feel good about yourself knowing that you did not break the law. That's just my 2 cents on it.
That's true.
But hold that thought. We're going to come back to this discussion on remuneration for an advocate. What should it be? What should it look like at the end? If you have questions, send them in quickly. We'll be happy to engage Andrew on that. And if you have questions for him directly, check out his website and email address just below us, and feel free to engage. If you're watching online in Kenya, stay tuned for more exciting information. I'm Solomon Wangwe.